The funeral pyres of Hereti have not yet cooled. Smoke still threads through the mountain passes like a mourner's veil when Tamar moves through the darkened scriptorium, her grief worn close as armor. She finds the chest beneath false flagstone, exactly where she left it. Iron-clasped, cedar-lined, smelling of linseed oil and the ghost of her own ambition. Her fingers find the bone-handled stylus first, then the rolled vellum, stiff with age and secrets. Somewhere above her, the court steward has already issued his decree. The maps are crown property now, to be sealed until her son comes of age. Tamar lights a single tallow candle. She does not seal the maps. Instead, she spreads them flat against the cold stone floor, and begins, with terrible precision, to remember everything she knows about how men die in mountains. The ambassador's words fall like stones into still water. He stands before the throne of Hereti, in robes of Seljuk silk, his contempt dressed in the language of diplomacy. 3 passes, surrendered without condition, within 40 days. The hall smells of tallow smoke and cold mountain stone. Tamar does not move. Her knuckles whiten against the carved oak of the armrest, the only betrayal her body permits. She has seen this performance before. The deliberate pause, the slight curl of the lip, the studied glance toward her son's empty throne beside her. The insult is architecture, carefully designed. He does not believe she can read maps. He does not know she drew them. That night, alone in her chamber, she unrolls the ones no one is supposed to know she kept. Beneath the monastery of Saint Nino, where the smell of beeswax and iron gall ink has haunted her since girlhood, Tamar moves with deliberate calm. She carries a commission for a gilded psalter, a lie wrapped in piety. The monks ask no questions of a grieving queen. Here, in the amber half-light of tallow candles, she unrolls her forbidden vellum across the copying desk. Passes marked in her own hand, river crossings measured in footsteps, gorges that swallow armies whole. Merchant testimony, gathered in whispers over weeks, flows through her reed pen into the living geography of her kingdom. Each line she draws is an act of quiet defiance and quiet grief. For these maps remember everything, including what she wishes they did not. And very soon, they will remember far more. She moves through the gorge like water, finding its own level, unhurried, inevitable. Beneath coarse, undyed wool, her fingers trace the worn leather of the measuring cord at her hip, the one tool she cannot leave behind. The eastern ravine reveals itself slowly, a thread of path, barely wider than a laden mule, hidden where the limestone folds back upon itself like a secret kept by the mountain alone. Ice melt drips from overhanging rock. The air smells of cold stone and distant pine smoke. She counts her paces. She reads the shadows. Here, precisely here, an army moving in darkness would funnel into single file, blind and slow. The Seljuk commander believes he holds every approach to Hereti in his mind. He does not yet know that the map in Tamar's possession is far more dangerous than any sword she could carry. The accusation falls like a blade on cold stone. Lord Vardan spreads her maps across the council table, vellum pages inked with mountain passes, river crossings, the careful geometry of survival, and names them evidence of treachery. The chamber smells of tallow smoke and old timber. Around the carved oak table, faces she has known since childhood turn carefully, calculatingly neutral. This is the cruelest mathematics of power. Betrayal requires intimacy. A stranger cannot wound this precisely. Tamar stands absolutely still, hands folded beneath her sleeves, her breath controlled, her expression a fortress that reveals nothing of the fire within. She surveys each lord in turn, cataloging allies and enemies with the same practiced eye that once measured mountain passes. The maps that might save them all now lie open like wounds. What she does next will determine whether she leaves this chamber as regent or prisoner. Alone in the scriptorium, by the guttering light of a tallow lamp, Tamar spreads the old vellum beside the new. Her fingers trace the mountain passes she surveyed in her husband's first year of reign. The ink still sharp, the measurements precise to the length of a horse's stride. Then she sees it. The garrison road marked in the court's official records curves east, away from the gorge. Her map shows it running west. Someone changed the direction. Someone who knew her husband would trust the court copy over his own instincts. The lamp flame shudders. She does not weep. She has wept already, in the years since his body was brought home on a shield. What she feels now is colder, cleaner, and far more dangerous. Tonight, the queen stops mourning. Tomorrow, she begins to hunt. Before 10,000 soldiers who have never seen a woman command a field, Tamar unrolls the maps. Vellum, the color of old honey, catches the mountain wind. The ink, Armenian cochineal, Georgian oak gall black, traces every gorge, every ford, every blind approach the Seljuk commander believes is secret. Her hand moves across the skin of the kingdom she has measured with her own instruments, her own grief, her own sleepless years. The army watches. The nobles who called her knowledge witchcraft fall silent. She does not speak of courage, or God, or glory. She speaks only of ground, precise, merciless, unanswerable ground. In this moment, cartography becomes sovereignty. The maps she drew in secret become the architecture of a kingdom's survival. But the same lines that will save her son now point, inescapably, toward the questions no one has yet dared ask about his father. It is the hour before dawn. The mountains hold their breath. Through the secondary ravine, a cleft so narrow the horses must be led single file, their hooves wrapped in oiled wool against the frostbitten stone. Tamar's soldiers move like smoke through the darkness. She has drawn this passage 100 times on vellum. Now it unscrolls beneath their feet in living geography. Every blind turn, every sheltered ledge, every place where the gorge opens and a man can breathe again. The Seljuk camp below glows amber with dying cook fires, its sentries watching the wrong horizon. Tamar's commanders need no torches. They carry the map inside them, memorized from her careful hand. 300 men become a single silent instrument. The geometry of the terrain is her geometry. And when the first pale light touches the peaks above, the trap she has drawn in ink becomes real. The commander is brought into the great hall at dawn, his wrists bound with horsehair cord, the mountain cold still clinging to his armor. Tamar stands before the fire, not seated, not enthroned. She has laid her maps across the council table like evidence at a trial, their vellum edges weighted with stones. She studies his face as a cartographer studies uncertain ground. Methodically, without mercy. He speaks. Perhaps he believes confession earns clemency. Perhaps he simply cannot bear her silence. In the geometry of his account, one name emerges. A lord of her own court. A man who shared her husband's wine and whispered false routes into the ear of a king who trusted him. Tamar does not weep. She does not speak. She marks the name in the margin of a map. Now comes the harder reckoning. The ink dries slowly in the mountain cold. Tamar sits beside her son, her scarred finger tracing the ochre lines of a world she has measured in grief and survival. She speaks without words, pointing to contour, to shadow, to the narrow throat of a past that once swallowed an army whole. The boy leans close, learning to read silence as cartographers do, as meaning. Around them, the citadel breathes again. Cooking fires, leather and cedar smoke, the ordinary miracle of continuation. But Tamar is not finished. With a reed cut fresh from the Alazani bank, she adds the final notation. The hidden pass, the betrayal, the price of knowledge. Sealing it into the vellum with the quiet authority of a woman who understands that truth, once mapped, cannot be unmade. Somewhere beyond the eastern gorges, a new threat is already moving.